What's a good word, everyone? It's your boy DKB here. I just want to say thanks for all the support. The channel's been steadily growing, and the number you see below, you can drop a text, shoot a voicemail, any ideas, topics, collabs, etc. you guys want to see. I'll include them in future videos and live streams, and I'll catch you again. Be easy. What's a good word, Jets fans? It's your boy DKB here. So we're finally getting some movement on the coaching staff front once again, and it's kind of funny. And I'm a little glad that I waited because I recorded a couple videos last night regarding like our defensive coordinator position and what may be happening on the defensive side of the staff because it's really been no movement. We've heard one name for maybe like the last month or so since all the Aaron Glenn hype intensified, and that's really been it. So I didn't know if it was him or nothing or what the case was, but we actually have updates to a few positions here. Our quarterback coach position, our defensive coordinator spot, and if one of the candidates don't work out for the defensive coordinator interview, I could also see them maybe just making a lateral move to being our DB coach, seeing how as Odin is now gone from us, and I believe he joined the Titan staff, which is where this other candidate is. But to kick things off at the top, at least in terms of our current staff, between contracts expiring, between Aaron Glenn coming in, figuring out who can stay, who can go, it looks like he'll be pretty comfortable removing most of the staff, right? We have Keith Carter, our offensive line coach, that's been officially fired, or at least that we're moving on from him and not retaining his services. And I guess the early rumors are he could join the Patriots coaching staff in some kind of maybe offensive line assistant capacity or something of that nature. But this is interesting to note because it just opens up another position, right? And everybody on the offensive side of the staff is going to be key for Aaron Glenn, right? The offensive coordinator obviously is the person that's going to oversee the entire structure of the offense. But then when you start dwindling down, you want to make sure that you have a great quarterback coach in play because we need somebody of the future, regardless if we want to retain Aaron Rodgers or not. We need to make sure that we can develop the next hope, right? The next little bit of light, so that we have something to view at the end of the tunnel here. I don't want somebody that's just accustomed or acclimated to working with veterans. And now that they have to recalibrate and build somebody from scratch, they really have no experience with it, right? So there's a part of along the lines of this whole conversation with Keith Carter was there's a bit of interesting details by Jeff Ulbrich, just kind of in the line of thinking here, where he mentioned part of what he felt like he failed at as the interim head coach was that he realized he had a lack of truth tellers within his coaching staff, people that left blind spots open, people that weren't advising him that there were certain issues that needed to be addressed and maybe were looking to handle it themselves or try to keep stuff off his plate. And maybe he didn't poke too many holes in that issue as well because he didn't want to really break up or cause any friction within the coaching staff, which is eye-opening and probably leads me to believe that, especially on the offensive side of the ball, where it feels like we didn't really have much of a clue, that could have been the case, right? And you can definitely make the argument Keith Carter was a man that was walking on thin ice since last year. So he always felt like somebody that wouldn't have been retained. But we're also lacking, at least in terms of awareness and who other options could be, right? It's been slow for offensive coordinator. It's been slow for defensive coordinator to just officially kick off interviews. So you imagine these position coach positions are going to take even longer. Hank Fraley was supposed to be a name that we thought many people would have expected to be potentially an offensive coordinator candidate for us. Maybe there was an extra title you could have thrown on, like the Lions did, to keep him, and he will be staying with them as the offensive line coach and run game coordinator. And he would have been an awesome option to have in here, right? So we'll be flying blind here a little bit, and we still don't even know what specific direction we may be going. Nick Caley, will it be Engstrand, also from the Lions? Maybe Aaron Glenn will prefer some level of continuity here. But again, he's been very enigmatic in his approach, and it's something that I actually love about the way that we're tackling this situation, even though it may be frustrating that we don't have these guys in play, right? You still talk about Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl ongoing, and we don't have a contingency party out there. We don't really have a idea of what we're going to be looking for in terms of traits and all that. And I know Aaron Glenn and Muji were supposed to be discussing some of those high level details, or maybe they even get into the minutia of it. But you can imagine things changing drastically based on who he hires on his coaching staff, and maybe their conversation influence it instead of the other way around of hiring the coaching staff and then you maybe revisit what you set for your expectations. But I don't imagine that's the way Aaron Glenn is going to roll in terms of assembling his coaching staff here. So we'll have to see how that plays out. But we do at least have some interviews finally coming through. As mentioned, Steve Wilks is probably the name that's been consistently a trend for the New York Jets. He'll be coming in, and I haven't dived a ton into a lot of these guys, but from the 30,000 foot view of what I know from Steve Wilks, he's had some head coach experience, which we heard is a priority and maybe a must, right, for Aaron Glenn here as he looks for a CEO approach, right? He wants to allow his coordinator, both offensively and defensively, to call plays, and he wants to worry about game management, setting the tone, efficiency, execution, right? He doesn't want to have to worry about the minute details of what's happening. That's why he's hiring these guys. And Steve Wilks fits the bill from an experience standpoint. Now, I've heard Jet Central, I've heard analysts, I've heard other guys, Green Bean, for example, call out the multiple teams that Steve Wilks has been on. And that would be one of my biggest red flags, right? That, and based on his experience and kind of this clashing idea that he's still a well respected defensive mind in the league, which definitely could be the case. You have to question, right? If this was an interview for any other job, why aren't you staying at a place for more than a year, right? And you're not leaving of your own accord. You're being fired or being let go or being moved on from. And as great as it is to have the experience of doing the job, one of the points I will argue to that is hiring experience just for the sake of hiring experience isn't all it's cracked up to be, right? And I could use real world examples and everything, but ultimately, I think it boils down to who can get the job done most effectively, who has the vision, who has the ability to go out there and execute this. And I know it's harder to obtain those details when you're talking about a first time person, but I wouldn't just ultimately say the job should go to Steve Wilks just on the merit of him spending 15 plus years in the league, whatever it is that it looks like for him, and just saying that he can get the job done because he's done it before. That's not always the case here. So I love the fact that we are still looking at other people. We have a new name in the mix, Chris Harris, former DB coach and pass game coordinator for the Titans, and he was mysteriously moved on from. I don't think it's for a lack of the job that he was able to do. Many people thought the Titans would be a team that you could just pass and run over all day. And I would say they've had the better cornerbacks at not only being able to play the pass, being able to get takeaways to a certain degree, but also still being effective against the run, considering all the moving parts and, the moving, change in philosophy, et cetera, et cetera. This also adds to the idea that even if he doesn't necessarily consider the previous experience as a critical factor for him with his coaching staff, you look at the fact that he probably wants former player personnel within his coaching staff as a strong priority here, right? Somebody that can connect, somebody that won't allow the players to use the excuses of, not understanding responsibilities, not having the accountability because he's been there, done that at a high level, and he's not going to demand anything less from his players. And then probably the most important piece, just because it's on the offensive side of the ball here, David Blough, quarterback coach for the Washington Commanders, has only been in the league for a year, from my understanding of what I dug up real quick. But you look at the job that was done with Jaden Daniels, and obviously everybody's probably going to want to buy in on that while the price is high and potentially willing to soar even further. So I can't knock them for at least touching base and looking. And he's coming in to have a lateral move here, right? He would be our quarterback coach. Maybe there is another title that gets thrown in there. I know if we hire Inkstrom, for example, who would move up from pass game coordinator to OC, maybe Blow would be quarterback coach slash pass game coordinator. Who knows how much Aaron Glenn would want to divvy up those responsibilities and conversations, right? But one of the things that I mentioned before was this idea of some of the details we heard about Jaden Daniels and his development. We know the Commanders are a more open team under their new ownership and regime to analytics. And one of the forefronts of that was this VR usage that Jaden Daniels was using and accelerating his mind and kind of improving his processing speed by breaking down defensive coverages and going through plays and going through his playbook at I think it was 1.75 times the speed of anything, right? So you essentially have guys, and we'll just use basic numbers here, operating at 2 times the normal pace. Pass rush 2 times faster, defensive backs breaking on plays and stuff 2 times faster. And so it's really going to up his ability to go out there and try to manipulate a defense, try to understand pre-snap what he wants to do, being able to react with excellent timing post snap, right? Because things can always change. DBs that end up coming in as part of a blitz package, defensive linemen that are dropping back in coverage into, small little slivers here and there, you name it. So I think this would be an intriguing guy as somebody that I would expect was at the forefront of some of those decisions and crafting out how they wanted to utilize that in terms of building a guy up. So I would be intrigued. Obviously, the experience isn't there, but I think along the lines of kind of what we mentioned with Rod Johnson and the Texans, for example, there's many scenarios still where you could do a lot worse than somebody that has done an elite job in the 1 year that they got an opportunity to with a quarterback where things could have very easily went wrong. And look at Caleb Johnson is just a very easy example of somebody that has the same, if not more, ability in many people's eyes than Jaden, but how he fell apart versus how Jaden Daniels was able to go out there and establish himself as a top 5 quarterback in many people's eyes by the time the season ended. So let me know what you guys think about the candidates here. What direction should we really be going on? Should we rely on experience as kind of a crutch versus some of these up and coming guys that just haven't had the experience, right? The amount of time to say that they're consistently elite or above average at their jobs. And I'll catch you guys again. Peace.